So what I wanted to talk about tonight is automation. At its core, it's true that automation, it's really about taking those repetitive tasks out for the purpose of being cheaper and ultimately drive productivity, ultimately drive user engagement. The challenge is that in doing so, we incur a risk. And the risk is that the moment you try and automate something, the moment you try and convert repetitive tasks into something that a software has to do, you're faced with the question, how do you build that intelligence into the software, right? And so this is an interesting piece because on one side you wanna, like we say, you wanna take the robot out of the human. Like you don't want somebody to have to fill 5 forms that essentially say the same thing, right? Provide the information once and just let it flow through. On the other side, you do want to maintain the human element to it. And so it's an interesting conflict that you have when tackling an automation issue. For me, the way I look at automation is an opportunity to take an exceptional experience and scale it. And I was reading an article recently that actually said the opposite. And I found it very interesting because the point of the article, the author was saying, well, through automation, you take an experience, but in order to make it exceptional, you cannot scale it. And he was giving an example of customized experiences. So he goes through an hotel, he checks in, which is essentially an automated process, but then its birthday falls during his stay, and then all the staff essentially all it does is customize his experience by remembering that it's his birthday and elevating his experience, right, and building that brand relationship. The point that I disagree with is that you can build mechanisms in order to do that at scale. It doesn't have to be the exception. And so if automation is done right, you can actually elevate the customer experience, and you can do so by enabling scale. A few years ago, we introduced a chatbot function in our customer service feature, amongst our customer service feature. And we had a number of conversations around how do you actually bring automation into that without jumping on the wagon of AI, NLP, and so like without jumping in the wagon of how do you make this thing intelligent in order to predict what the user is actually trying to tell us. And so I think this is the point. The point being that in the age of AI, it's really the human element that is actually what can help you to elevate the experience. It's kind of counterintuitive. It's, I think you guys were into this. Sandeep highlighted also another important element, the fact that it's about the medium, the channel that you want to have that exchange with. But fundamentally, I think another takeaway here is that you don't have to have fancy technology. Sometimes even a scripted chatbot that relies on very old technology, if done well, can actually deliver great value for customers and great experiences. I think the fundamental idea here is that it's trying to understand where is it your customer is going, what is it is trying to do, she or she are trying to do, and then help them get there as fast as possible. Now there is a compromise, there is a trade-off between saving costs, there is a component on operational costs that you want to manage, right? And you have to balance that with the customer experience, right? And I think what often we tend to neglect is the fact that actually raising the customer experience bar does have a cost on its own. And so it's not a one-on-one, it's not really, well, in order to I'm going to sacrifice the customer experience because I'm going to save money. It doesn't work that way, because the point is you lower your customer experience in order to raise that. That has an implication, has a financial implication as well. And so the idea here is, think of automation as a mechanism that you can build in your software, in your products, to take your customer as fast as possible where he or she wants to go. Okay? The other point, and I go back to the example of the hotel, is that as you're using a product, whether it's a tech product or whether it is visiting or staying in a hotel, you go through a journey as a user, as a customer, and each and every interaction that you have with that product, you have the opportunity to prioritize that experience. And I'm not talking about simply design elements. I'm not talking just about the interactions that the user has with the product itself, but also the value that you're trying to transmit. And what I mean by that is, have you guys heard of this example, this model that essentially says, look, we're trying to understand what job the customer is trying to do, right? And there is a whole paradigm around that I'm absolutely not fluent in, and defer you guys to Wikipedia and Google for. The message it is trying to put across is, you have to truly understand your customer, and what's obvious in your mind, in your eyes, may not actually be the ultimate goal that they're trying to achieve. And so when somebody's trying to go from point A to point B, meaning I'm interacting with the product to achieve something, what often we tend to neglect are the triggers of that action. In other words, why I am in need of going from A to B. And then two other components are essentially what's the attractiveness to get to B, as well as what is the effort that it's going to take me in order to get to that pivot point, after which is going to be like a downhill. An example of this could be, say in that example, Nidhi had to contact customer support. So she had a trigger, and her trigger was around the refund policy, a specific issue that she had with her account. So that was her trigger. And she had to get to a point where she had to obtain an explanation or better a refund for her order. What was important to realize is that while she has that attractiveness of saying, hey, I have to get to obtain this refund in terms of goal, and she had the trigger of, well, I have this problem. The fact that we were able to facilitate the journey, and you can think of this somebody going up to a hill. The steeper the hill, the more difficult for that person to go through, the easier to drop off, and therefore the moment they drop off, they lose interest in your brand, they lose interest in your product, hard to bring them back in. So the lower the slope, the better it is. And the way to you lower the slope and let them climb and move as fast as possible is really to think about their end-to-end journey, their end-to-end experience. And in this case is, hey, we'll try and fix it through automation, but we have to offer her a lifeboat. We do have data, right? I mean, again, in the example, what I liked, I said what I didn't like, but what I did like about the example, the author that explained his check-in experience of birthday and the hotel staff recognizing it during his stay is the fact that they understood the importance of data. And it's data that they were going to collect anyway. Through the check-in process, you get the ID card, you have all the information you need there to actually build that scalable customer experience. And so failing to use data, it's a true missed opportunities because it unlocks real value. Think of it in terms of recommendation. Think of it in terms of understanding which features to prioritize. Like, how can you make your product better? If everybody's asking you, oh, I wish I could have a search function in your product, Not capitalizing on the opportunity of what your customers are telling you is just a missed opportunity. Look, I'm sure everybody that has had some form of any form of interaction with somebody in software development will tell you have to talk to your customers. I think you have to talk with your customers, but apply a filter. Because there's this bias in talking to your customers and it's unconscious bias where essentially what they'll do, they'll drift you into a solution. Henry Ford figured this all out, but we tend to forget that. We tend to forget that oftentimes customers come to us and they present us a solution as opposed to a problem. And so do talk with customers. It's how I spend probably 80% of my time. But do so with the awareness that you have to go deeper, that you have to ask the right question, that you have to walk the store, be a customer yourself of your own product. The challenge, though, that comes, at least that we have, that I have personally, is that in my current space, I'm working with over 30 partner teams across business, legal, editorial, tech. And so it becomes very challenging when you are working on a roadmap and you're trying to understand, okay, what are we going to do next? And what I've learned is that empathizing with everyone is actually a great way to untangle the discussion. Everybody's going to come to it from a different angle. Some of the tech folks will bring out, the more functional requirements, more of the function, the practical aspects. Others will bring more the emotional side of what we should be building, what we should be thinking. You as a product manager, you're right there, trying to balance these competing interests. And ultimately, again, understanding what is the problem that you're trying to solve is the key to unlock the real value, because it's going to help you make informed decisions in understanding the trade-offs. And when we talk about trade-offs, you have actually let me try the other way. When you guys, if you guys think about a product, if you guys think about any experiences, what could be some trade-offs that come to mind? Do A instead of B. What could A and B be? Flexibility versus usability. Maybe speed versus feature rich set, right? Complexity. If you have in mind your customers, you can work backwards from them. You're going to be able to make those hard decisions. By empathizing with your audience, your partner teams, you're going to be able to bring everybody with you. As a product manager, you have this one opportunity of selling and communicating the vision. Again, I think the greatest value that I have in working with so many partner teams is that through the interactions that I have with them, they help me to shape the vision and direction of the product. So instead of looking at it as a negative and as a challenge, if you welcome that as an opportunity and you work backwards from your customer needs into, okay, here are the 3 things I'm going to do this year, it brings a very different dynamics, much more productive dynamics at work. Now, this is close to my heart. And I wanted to show this because talking about trade-offs, you guys know what this is? Have you seen it before? It's calendar app. Nothing to do with Amazon, but it's Time Page is made by, it's an app by Moleskine. Moleskine is Italian brand. Big fan. Yeah. And I love it. And so one of the things, I love the brand, I love notebooks, I love the design element, but I tried so hard to use it and I just cannot. And so sometimes I open it, I look at it, I enjoy it, and I close it, and then I revert back to the stock calendar app. And again, here, and I'm not saying this is bad, right? I'm just saying it doesn't work for me. But this is a clear example of trade-offs, right? And the agenda on the right, it's flipped. You can see that you have essentially the calendar, second screen from the right. You have the calendar on the left side, and then you have all the list of tasks to the right. It's a trade-off that was made to prioritize certain user interactions and design choices that just doesn't work on the screen size of my phone. Yeah, it may work very well on an iPad, maybe work on a different form, but it doesn't fit me. The point is, you cannot please everybody. Okay, and again, if you have in mind what is the vision that you have for your product, you'll have awareness, and you'll be making trade-offs in a very conscious way. And it's unrealistic to say that you'll be able to please everybody, whether it's going to be your software engineers or your partner business team or Federico as a user. You will have to make conscious decisions. You'll prioritize against those, and you'll revisit, and you'll iterate on these decisions if they're proven to be incorrect, right? There is always going to be a cost. And so it's one of the most difficult part of my job is to have these conversations. And somebody mentioned it's about the ROI and the investment, but it's also about it's also about the being able to stand behind those decisions. Yeah. Sometimes it's easy because you can put a number to it, but oftentimes you don't have the number to stand behind your decisions. Oftentimes you have imperfect data. The world is highly ambiguous, or the problem you're trying to solve is highly ambiguous. It would be great if you can walk in a room like this, have all your customers in here, all your segments, and you can do all the deep dives that you like. In short, I think these are the three messages that I wanted to share with you today. Human is classy. I get it. I love tech, and there is a lot that can be done in terms of innovation. But there is also a lot that is being done wrong, or a lot that could be done better by using and implementing good technology. And focus on your customers. I know it sounds an obvious one, like customers always first, but it's probably the number one reason why products actually fail. Like the inability of working backwards from the true customer needs. And keep in mind that, again, as you engage customers, there is inherent bias. And so you have to peel that onion. Okay? And there are multiple ways to do that, but the most effective that I found is try to walk the store, be your own customer, and try not to take anything for granted. And it's very hard because, especially if you're very invested in your project, in your startup, in your idea, it's very hard to take a step back. But this is where having trusted advisors or a trust team around you that can give you that tough love really helps. Okay. At Amazon, we use tenets. Tenets are guiding principles, and it's really what unlocks trade-offs discussions. It's really what unlocks disagreement, or helps to shape the decision. Should we go mountain towards the sea? You have to establish guiding principles up front. That will help you when you'll have to make those hard decisions down the road. And if you do that, then you can focus on using the data that you're collecting and understand and exploit that data to try and deliver the remarkable experience that we talked about. I mean, finally, last but not least, but it's product management. I think it's all about trade-offs. It's all about influencing people, understanding and being very empathize with your engineers, empathize with your partner teams, and being very humble as well. I think the biggest inputs that I had in recent product really came from the people that were living and breathing the development of it. And so I think the relationship with your tech team or your engineering partners and your business team is a crucial one, because oftentimes they offer that unique perspective. I think you guys were asking, like look at the other side of the world, right? But I think there is terrific value that oftentimes is not harnessed in that relationship, and it's seen more like a conflicting one as opposed to being a collaborative one, keeping in mind that there are real no solutions. Okay, so it's kind of going hand in hand through this journey, having your tenets that are guiding you through these decisions, and keeping the customer in mind and working backwards from there. If there is one thing that you can take away, it's this. I think automation is great. It's not a panacea. It's not going to solve everything. Same way I don't think AI is going to solve everything. You as a product manager have a responsibility to really think about what you're doing, challenge your partner teams, challenge the decisions you're making. Just make sure that whatever experience you're delivering for your customers doesn't let them hate your product, okay? Because you definitely don't want them to be tangled all around it and then hating you for it. So that's all I had.